All right, this supposedly is now being recorded, so if I can figure out how to get this recording later, I'll try to toss it up on YouTube. So just so everyone knows, this is the weekly SIG testing meeting. This meeting is being recorded. We'll put it up on YouTube. It is October 10th, 2017. So I think our first item on the agenda, Timothy, if you want to go ahead.
I just had a PSA that 181 is slated to go out later this week. There are a couple of testing items that we know about that we're trying to get fixed in the end-to-end tests. So if you know of any other items that need addressing, please try to get them in the next couple of days, and please either CC this SIG or also CC, I believe his handle is at one second. JPBETZ. And that's all I have for PSAs.
All right, I think next on the agenda is Maru. Should SIG testing take responsibility for upgrade testing?
So this question was prompted by attending the retrospectives last week and having been involved in the release process for also 1.7, 1.6. Upgrade testing always seems to get sort of dropped in the floor because it's not really something that you can do reliably until the end of the cycle, and it's kind of a tragedy of commons problem because SIG really owns it. And I, after hearing that, I thought at least I would follow up with SIG testing with a suggestion, not that we necessarily do the work, but that we are responsible for providing leadership and coordinating SIGs to actually have the upgrade tests be reliable and be able to be used as an indication of when a release can be cut. Because every release that I've been involved with, which has only been 3, but it's generally a very unreliable signal, and it's generally completely broken at the outset of code freeze, and they're lucky if they get it working by the end of that period. So I'm curious what other people think about that.
I've had a meta topic regarding this, in that in order to make this easier, we should probably have had running Kubernetes on Kubernetes a lot easier and manageable, because this is what other people do for exactly this problem scenario. Because that way it's just part of their process, because right now our upgrade procedures and processes are not the cleanest thing. So I think if we enabled that, or we had some way to sway that enablement, it would probably make the testing process much, much easier.
So are you talking about just having, you say Kubernetes on Kubernetes? I mean, I worked on something to that effect. It's kind of probably fallen apart by now, but you're just talking to be able to deploy Kubernetes on Kubernetes and just have lighter weight deployments and upgrades?
Yeah, so that way the upgrade process would just be like a rolling upgrade, right, with some type of strategy. And then you could monitor the results of that as part of a test, right? Because we don't do that, the process is kind of jiggery-pokery for however which way somebody has deployed these things.
Right, you're like dependent on cloud. I mean, the one catch with that is that it may be difficult or impossible to test cloud-specific functionality, but you're just talking about the general case?
For the most part, yes. I think that's the biggest problem. Most of the SKU version problems we come across are not necessarily cloud provider specific, although I'm sure there's probably a set of problems that exist there. Most of the ones we have, that I've seen at least, have been just base level functionality, API promotions, things like that, which when they go from version A to version B, they break everything because they've switched API groups, or they've done some other shifting in the APIs.
Okay. Anybody else have an opinion on that? No. I guess I'll follow up and see if I can get my cube on cube solution working. I know that if it's something we can get working fast enough, it may be of general interest to test infra beyond upgrade tests, because it would just reduce the cost of deployment. You wouldn't need nodes. You just need an existing Kubernetes cluster, and then you could just deploy with standard kube infrastructure, eating their own dog food, as it were. Anyway, so yeah, I'll follow up and maybe have something back next week. Steve?
We have nothing else on that. I think next, Steve had an agenda item, thoughts on allowing for authentication of PROW components.
Can't hear you.
Your mic isn't working.
Okay then.
We could ramble on about what we think might be the problem with PROW authentication.
So maybe some backstory, like what's the existing state of authentication for PROW?
I think there isn't any. Like right now, basically all the PROW components are just, yeah, I'm not really sure what the context of this is since.
You try guiding the conversation, Steve, with text?
Is there anything else on the agenda?
That was the last thing on the agenda. Anyone else have anything they haven't put on the agenda they'd like to discuss?
Oh, sorry. Steve's commented in Slack.
Okay.
We want to be able to run tests for PRs that fix embargoed CVEs.
Oh, okay.
We have a security repo and a bunch of stuff around that. I don't know if we have we could set up its own PROW instance or something like that, but I don't know if we ever did that.
Right.
So he says we can't have logs for those tests exposed in PROW and Kubernetes as we do today, and we don't want a separate deployment for everything to do those. Is there another way?
Yeah, now I understand. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's really given a whole lot of thought to this. Like right now, I guess, the logs would be, and I guess if we wanted, we'd have the logs rather than logs and everything being public, they would be more privately available. And then, yeah, I guess potentially have all of the infrastructure. It seems like a lot of infrastructure would have to plumb through though, because like TestGrid and Kubernetes and PROW all use those logs. And so you would need to extend all of those things to sort of have some sort of authentication or something.
You could quite easily, so if you had some way of flagging a PROW job as sensitive and not showing logs, that would work. Kubernetes does know what your GitHub username is, and that's reasonably secure. So we could have a whitelist on people that should be able to see those. It's still kind of hacky, but at least you wouldn't have to redeploy everything. And presumably you would upload it to a separate bucket where Kubernetes would have read access and it wouldn't be public read.
Mm-hmm.
But we could also say that for those jobs, you wouldn't want, you would just have to look at the bucket directly. But that's pretty lame as well.
You'd also need to do deck.
Yeah, exactly. PROW would have some option to specify that it's not visible. Just like we currently have operators where we can specify that this runs on Jenkins or this runs on Kubernetes, we can specify that the logs are hidden. Or heck, that even the job itself is hidden. But how much, if it's an embargoed CVE, how much could you show? Like the fact that there's that we're running secret jobs, do we have to hide the jobs altogether? Okay.
Probably. So Steve has a few more comments here on Slack. So can't have logs exposed for those tests, or can't have logs for those tests exposed in PROW and Kubernetes as we do today. We don't want a separate deployment for everything we do either. So we want to have an auth as a first-class idea of auth in these components. To use GitHub OAuth or whatever to get access to the logs and overview. Before we begin hashing out some ideas, let's just want to ask generally if the community felt like this was something we wanted to do. separate buckets, et cetera. Just want to know what the general action was to author these components. If there's general agreement, this may be useful. We'll try to own pushing it through.
Well, Kubernetes has the OAuth flow already built in, so that would be the one really easy place to put most of this. And it also has the recent runs, which looks something like what you'd get from TestGrid or whatever, so you could view it. So we could get something hacky set up pretty quickly, but anything beyond that we'll have to discuss otherwise.
Right. I mean, I think it sounds like this is more like, are we interested in worried about Proud Deck right now, not worried about hacky and quick. If the general agreement is not yuck, we can do some design ideas, he writes. So I think the general idea or the general agreement seems like this seems fine. I don't hear any major objections to this, so I think it seems reasonable. I think my sort of, or at least in working on some of the Proud configurations, I feel like sort of the Kubernetes security repository has sort of been neglected, abandoned, well, not abandoned, but like, it seems like sort of the test info, we haven't really done any work on making this actually work or making sure it still works. I know some people have done some work in the past to get it all set up and it may have been working at some point. But I think it would be good, for somebody to own making sure that all this stuff works, because right now it's kind of there on the side and sort of it's kind of maintained, but nobody actually knows if we can actually run any tests against the security repo, and finding out when we need to actually run tests against a security repo that doesn't work at that time is not going to be a fun thing. So we should probably do our best to try to get ahead of that such that we can actually do that when we need to.
We can also loop in the GKE security team. They would be interested as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the DNS mask vulnerability, they did something. I don't know if they ran tests on it beforehand, but they'd probably like a process that was more helpful for them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any more comments or anything else anyone would like to discuss? All right. Hearing none, I think I'll call this meeting.
Cool.
Oh, wait, I do have one thing.
Okay.
What's the state of Tide?
Tide's running on test info right now, and it seems to have been working well for, what a week now?
We haven't had too much batch testing and testing for those since our flow rate versus test rate is wrong.
We have had a couple batches and they seem to be working fine, but that's not, it's minimally tested.
Okay.
Joe is working on the front end for that, so you can actually see some state to the system. And once that's available, we can roll it out to more repos and perhaps even think about replacing some queue with it on main front once we have a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, go
we
ahead.
plan to have all of that done by the end of the quarter for sure, hopefully sooner. But yeah, there should be no more submit queues by the end of the quarter.
Okay, just checking. Federation is probably a couple weeks away from cutting over, and once that's in place, assuming nothing is kind of a deal breaker, it'd be good to switch over to Tide from nothing. So, cool. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to call it the end of the meeting. Bye.